What's happening, everybody? This is Syracuse Basketball Postgame presented by Krause Health. And did we just watch Jim Boeheim retire? That's the question. I don't know is the answer. It sure sounded like a retirement speech. It sure felt like a retirement speech. But Jim Boeheim, through his postgame press conference following Syracuse's loss to Wake Forest, 77-74 in the ACC tournament, a heartbreaker for the Orange, by the way, as Williamson hits a three-pointer with less than a second to go to eliminate the Orange from the ACC tournament to end its season at 17-15. Jim Boeheim, very reflective in his postgame press conference, but also several times deferred and said it's up to the university whether he coaches or not, said at the end of the press conference that he hopes they can come to an agreement, but would not commit to retiring. He would not commit to stepping aside. Asked specifically and pointedly by Mike Waters and Donna DeToda right after the game in the postgame press conference, the clearest thing that Jim would say is it's up to the university and he hopes that they could come to an agreement. He also reflected a lot in that postgame press conference. So that now takes over the conversation here. As Syracuse loses, they're eliminated. They lost 5 of 6 games to end the season, and we may have just seen Jim Boeheim's last game as head coach in, of all places, Greensboro, North Carolina. Not fitting of a Big East Titan if that's how it's going to go down for Jim, but that's how it went down with Syracuse going to the ACC and all the adjustments they had to make to the modern game in the last 10 years or so. That was a very strange press conference. If you didn't see it, you'll see highlights of it. You'll see clips from it. We'll be writing about it on syracuse.com, but just the immediate reaction that we have here. I mean, it was odd. If any of you saw it and were watching it, jump back in here and give us your comments. I'm going to start highlighting some of your comments here because, look, the game is one thing, but it looks like this is it, folks. He keeps putting it on the university. He doesn't sound like a man who thinks the university is going to bring him back just based on how that press conference went. He also said he gave his, I couldn't tell if he's being sarcastic or not, but he said he gave his retirement speech on the court Saturday at the Jerry McNamara Hakeem Warwick ceremony. And in the press conference after that, and he said nobody could put 2 and 2 together on that. So let's start highlighting your comments, guys. A lot to get here. Brian says, sitting here in Greensboro thinking this is exactly how the season would go. Missed opportunities. TV Teddy. Yeah, officiating was something here. Doug notes more late game execution. So Joe Girard missed a three-pointer late in the game. That led to Wake Forest getting the ball, going the other way, and hitting the Williamson three that ultimately sank Syracuse's battleship. Benny Williams comes off the bench, not off the bench, but comes out of the darkness, if you will, with 18 points and 11 rebounds. Jesse Edwards did manage to get a double-double today, despite the double teams that he got from Wake and better defense. Certainly what we saw on Saturday. Judah Mintz led Syracuse with 18 points as well, but Williamson hits the shot that knocks Syracuse down here. As Dale says, why didn't Joe try to drive on that last shot, drive and dish there? Brian says, fitting end of the season. And now we're starting to get into the Boeheim talk because we may have just seen Jim Boeheim retire. He wouldn't commit to it. He wouldn't say it. He put it on the university. So now we await any official word, any official statement from the university on this. And then we'll have, I would imagine, to be one final press conference with Jim Boeheim if that's the course. But Maddie says, love with Boeheim and what he did for Syracuse, a true leader. It's time to hand it over to a trusted assistant coach at this point. A once proud program, Joe notes here. Josh notes bad defense to end the game. Looks like Judah said goodbye as well. And that's the other thing that you have to wonder about here. Joe Girard, Jesse Edwards, do they take their other year? Does Judah Mintz go to the NBA? What other players will hear the siren song of the transfer portal now that the season is over? And the season is over, guys, because Syracuse is not going to the NIT. They're certainly not going to the NCAA tournament. That much is obvious here, but I don't believe the NIT is going to offer them an invite as well. So there is, for the second consecutive year, no postseason beyond the ACC tournament for the Orange upcoming here. And it sounds like a lot of things are coming to an end here. Jeff says the 10 threes kept them in the game. Where was Joe today? 10 seconds left. Joe takes a bad shot inside the three-point line with Edwards at the foul line. Bell should have been in on that last possession. Yeah, how about that? Benny Williams and Chris Bell, who have been absent all year, or, inconsistent, I think would be the best way to put it. absent for the most part, both key in the first half, hitting threes, keeping Syracuse in it. Wake Forest goes on a 17-1 run at one point in the second half of this game. Syracuse comes back, and it just became a back-and-forth affair down the stretch, ultimately won by 3 by Wake Forest here. And now we've got 2 different conversations going at once. Copeland comes off the bench. What did he end up with here? We'll give you some numbers while we're yapping about it here. Quadir Copeland with 6 points, all at the free throw line, by the way. Judah with 18, Benny with 18. Jesse ended up with 12 and 10, got to a double-double in what could be his final game at Syracuse. Chris Bell with 11 points, including 3 3-pointers on the day. So they got the extra help that they needed against Wake Forest here. And when you look at the numbers, Wake Forest shot 45%, 28 of 62. The Orange, 39%. Syracuse shot 10 of 17 at the three-point line today. Wake Forest just 9 of 28. They actually hit less threes in this game than they did on Saturday, but they were much better in the paint. That ended up being a 36-24 edge for Wake Forest, so they went the other way in this game, trying not to hit threes, but trying to win this thing inside in the paint. As Antonio notes, if Boeheim retires or is retired, I hope GMAC becomes the coach, more experienced than Boeheim when he took over 49 years ago. So there's a vote for Jerry McNamara there. So how the university handles this now, and this could be in today with the way that Boeheim was speaking after this game, will they firmly say that we're not retaining Jim Boeheim as head coach and we're doing a national search? Will they just enact the plan that Jim Boeheim called my radio show just about a year ago to state that is in place? He wouldn't say specifically who it was or what it was, but that there was a plan in place for his succession. Is that simply Jerry McNamara or Adrian Autry at this point? Are we going to see that plan enacted, or are we going to see the university, kind of kick the can down the road here a little bit and say, we're looking for our next head coach, whoever that shall be? But at least in that press conference, right after the game, he did not commit to retiring. As Steve notes here, JB seemed to be saying that he wants the university to offer him another job, and he will accept that. And look, we're not sure when Jim Boeheim's contract is up. I believe it's the end of next season. Syracuse keeps that information private. It's not something that's been revealed at this point. It's something Jim Boeheim did not want revealed as to hurt recruiting. Those are his words. You can determine whether or not that's the case. You got coaches at public schools that we know what their contract status is, and, that really shouldn't matter, frankly. But Jim almost sounded like he wanted Syracuse to offer him a deal. That, look, it's always been in their hands, right? But it just always felt like Jim was, in essence, an emperor and ruled over his status, and he decided whether he wanted to come back or not. He can always decide if he wants to retire. He certainly didn't do it there, and I really don't blame the guy if he doesn't want to do it, sitting in some room in Greensboro as opposed to having a press conference here or doing it his own way. But boy, there's just a lot of, it felt like the end. He reflected a lot, which he typically wouldn't do in a scenario like that. Talked about his career and coaching here and living in Syracuse and loving Syracuse and getting to coach his sons, amongst the things that he talked about, but didn't formally say, I'm done. He kept deflecting when asked directly about it, that it's up to the university, right? As Steve notes here, Jim could have said right then and there that Red would be the new head coach and offered him his full support, but did not do that. He's leaving it on the university's hands. Be careful what you wish for. A new coach brings seasons of no tournament. Well, Syracuse has missed the tournament 5 of the last 9 years, and now 3 of the last 4. So new coach, current coach, be careful what you wish for. I mean, the Jim Boeheim era was going to end at some point, and it feels like it's ending now. So to put it squarely on the university, to put it on, really, that's Ken Severud and John Wildhack and somewhat the board of trustees. Interesting power play move there by Boeheim. Hey, I've done this for 47 years, won over 1,000 games, 5 Final Fours, 20 Sweet 16s, 7 Elite Eights. What we've done lately, certainly not living up to expectation. And this is just me, kind of speaking here. I'm not speaking for Jim, but just kind of put it right back on them. Dan saying Mike Hopkins, who could be out at Washington if things keep going the way they have been out there. Good mix of retirement talk. And Steve notes it here. What did he say Saturday was the retirement speech? Yeah, that speech on the court afterwards wasn't really a retirement speech. According to Boeheim, it kind of was. And then he reflected a little bit in the press conference afterwards, and then he was attacking sports radio callers, amongst other things, in his post-game press conference afterwards. So right to the end, some drama with Boeheim, right? I mean, didn't say anything definitively, but it sounded like, it felt like the end at this point. So we'll see where the university takes it from here for sure. But you guys also talking about what we saw today in the future of Syracuse basketball. Al says Quadira point, Jude at 2, Bell at the 3, Benny at the 4, Jesse comes back, Taylor the 6 man. Yeah, who comes back next year? Does Judah come back? He looked very upset at the end of the game. And he's a competitor. He's got a fire in his belly. I certainly understand that. Does Joe Girard and Jesse Edwards use their extra year of eligibility? Who goes to the portal? Does Chris Bell go to the portal? Does Benny Williams go to the portal? Benny goes out on a high note if that was his last game at Syracuse. Who of the freshmen decides to return or enter the portal? Like, we're in this world of college basketball where the door is constantly revolving. So the natural players that were celebrated at senior day, whether they decide to come back, the portal itself, the NBA draw for Judah Mintz, I don't think he would get drafted if he went into the draft. If he did, it would be late second round. But if Judah comes back, who's he playing for, right? Is he playing for Jerry? Is he playing for a new coach? Like, there is so much up in the air right now. It is just an absolute treasure trove of all sorts of things going on here at this point. Scott wants to know, if Jimmy B doesn't leave, will you? Nah, sorry, Scott, you're stuck with me. I am not announcing my retirement at this point. Joe says the season's going to be a nice payday for your therapeutical services to the fans. Happy to do it, Joe. Dr. Axe is in session at this point. Tony says a lot of missed easy shots in the second half. Always lazy on defense. Benny proved today that JB can still coach. Right to the end, baby. Took him a while. Like every fifth or sixth game, Benny Williams would show up, but they needed him today, and he kept him in that game today with the 18 and 11 at this point. Brian says, I'm done with Syracuse basketball until Boeheim is gone. I mean, the way it sounded today, you might get your wish here. Jason Hart, there's a vote there for him to take over as the next head coach at Syracuse. You know, look, if they do go outside the program and it's not Jerry or Red, I think you got to give a hard look at Matt Langle at Colgate, who by all accounts looks like he's going to put Colgate back into the NCAA tournament again. Patriot League championship game coming up later today. They're playing a Lafayette team that's got a losing record. That'd be a hell of an upset if Lafayette won that game. But, you know, just one name to throw out there. A lot of speculation will certainly be out there at this point. As Brian says, why Hopkins? He hasn't really excelled at Washington. He plays zone, a Boeheim clone in that sense. Jimmy says Wake made one more play today. That's it. Bing, bang, boom. Miss on one end by Joe Girard. Go down the way. 3-point shot. Bang. 0.5. That was 0.2 seconds. After a review, they put 0.5 on the clock, and Syracuse couldn't even get a playoff at this point. I can't remember watching Syracuse without the 2-3 zone. Yeah, what will change there if there's a new head coach? Need to go outside the program, as Steve notes here. I think that ultimately, and I'm just speculating here, but I think ultimately that's what John Wildhack will say, is that we did an extensive search, but landed on Jerry McNamara as head coach or Adrian Autry as head coach. I'm sure he's got some names and some people he'll look at here, but you know, ultimately, I think they're going to do what they did with the lacrosse programs. Kayla Traynor comes home to take over at Syracuse. Gary Gate just goes across the hall to take over Syracuse men's lacrosse. And I feel like they're going to keep it in the family for this one as well. That's just my speculation on that point. Maybe he will circle back and zoom out and look who's out there. You know, there's John. I do not agree with this at all, but I certainly understand why people would say Rick Pitino and the job that he's done at Iona. I don't think that's really something Syracuse should be doing, and bringing in a coach with Rick Pitino's, let's say, reputation and resume. Great coach, but I think he can find somebody else. He brings a lot of baggage to the table, not to mention he's 70 years old. Why would you go from a 78 to a 70-year-old head coach? So we could go through so many names here and speculate till the cows come home, folks, but that's what it sounded like. That is what it sounded like at that press conference. And Jim even said, I gave my retirement speech Saturday after the game. But what he did not say is, I retire. What he did not say is, I will not be back next season as the head coach of Syracuse basketball, deferring consistently to the university and that it is their decision. Okay, guys, that was a crazy game. That was a crazy post game, and this situation will continue to evolve, right? So we are going to have plenty of coverage on syracuse.com. Stay tuned for that. We'll have plenty of coverage to come in the days ahead here. And who knows what kind of events we could be covering going forward. It's now on the university. Jim Boeheim deferred to them many times in that press conference, and we'll see what their decision is. So let me say here as we wrap up this version of Postgame, thank you. Thank you for being here all season long in these post games. It's been great. The late nights we've spent together, I mean, depending what time it is, wherever you watch, but many late nights for me, and just incredible. Your feedback, as we joked around there, Dr. Axe, get to hang here and listen to you guys and highlight your comments. And it was great. And I really enjoyed doing this, and I really enjoy getting your feedback. And some of the regulars that come in here, you know who you are, right? I'm seeing some of you guys say thank you here, and I want to highlight what you're doing. No, thank you. I mean, it's been incredible. Dennis, I appreciate that, but I will admit my basketball knowledge is limited. So I will already decline your offer to take over as Syracuse head coach. Though they do pay well up there. So I guess I'll have to think about it. So thank you guys. Look at all these thank yous. I am overwhelmed. I really appreciate what you guys do and what you bring to the table and being here after every game. It's incredible. So we'll see what happens in the near future here. We are scheduled to do Orange Weekly tomorrow, Thursdays at noon Eastern time. That might change based on like crazy stuff going on around here, but we'll get together and do that. And we do that throughout lacrosse season as well. Now that basketball is winding down, we'll see if the women's team makes it into the NCAA tournament. Frankly, I doubt it, but they'll play in the NIT, and we've got lacrosse coming up. So Thursdays at noon, we'll get together on these same channels you're watching now and just talk all things SU sports. But that is going to do it for Syracuse basketball postgame, short of some very surprising trips to the NIT that could be on the way for both Syracuse women's and men's basketball, though I certainly doubt it at this point. So I think this will be our last basketball postgame, short of a surprise NIT bid. We will be here Thursdays at noon for Orange Weekly. Thank you so much for being here all season long, guys. Hate that it came to a sputtering end like this today at the ACC tournament, but them's the breaks for the Orange, who will more than likely end their season at 17-15 with this loss to Wake Forest today. Thank you so much, everybody. This has been Syracuse basketball postgame presented by Krause Health. We'll talk to you next time.